أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين وليا ولي الله أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين وليا حجة الله على الخلق وصي رسول الله وخليفته بلا فصل حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين حجة ابن الحسن روحي وأرواحنا لتراب مقدمه الفداء الذي بيمنه رزق الوراء وبوجوده ثبتت الأرض والسماء اما بعد ایھا المؤمنون اوصیکم ونفسی بتقوی اللہ. سب سے پہلے اپنے آپ کو اور پھر مومنین کو اللہ کی بارگاہ کی طرف دعوت دیتا ہوں. اور اللہ کی ذات نے قرآن میں دو طرح کے انسانوں کا ذکر کیا ہوا ہے. ایک انسان کا جو ذکر ہوا ہے سورہ بقرہ میں وہ مومن ہے. مومن جس کا ادعا اور دعویٰ اس کے عمل کے ساتھ ایک جیسا ہو. عمل اور دعویٰ اس کا ایک جیسا ہے. منافق کا جو ذکر ہوا ہے قرآن میں، اللہ کی ذات قرآن میں کہتی ہے کہ منافق وہ انسان ہے جس کا دعویٰ اور عمل ایک جیسا نہیں ہے. منافقت قرآن میں جو ذکر ہوا ہے وہ ایسے کچھ بیان ہوا ہے کہ انسان کا ظاہر ایک طرف ہے، اچھا ہے، لوگوں کے سامنے اچھائی دکھاتا ہے، لیکن اس کا باطن ظاہر کے ساتھ ملتا نہیں ہے. ظاہری طور پہ اسلام کو قبول کیا ہوا ہے، شہادتین زبان پہ جاری کر لی، مومنوں کے درمیان اہل بیت کی محبت دکھاتا ہے وہ، لیکن جب وہ تنہائی میں آ جائے تو وہ کوئی اور شخص بن جاتا ہے. جب مسجد کے باہر ہو، جب اپنے خلوت کرے تو وہ اپنا جو حقیقی چہرہ ہے وہ اس کو سامنے ظاہر آ جاتا ہے اس کو. اور خلاق کائنات نے قرآن میں کچھ اس طرح بیان کیا ہے منافقت کے بارے میں، وَإِذَا لَقُوا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا، جب ایک منافق مومن سے ملتا ہے تو کیا کرتا ہے؟ قَالُوا آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ، وہ اپنے ایمان کا اظہار کرتا ہے دوسروں کے سامنے. وَإِذَا خَلَوْا إِلَى شَيَاطِينِهِمْ، جب وہ اپنے شیطانوں کے ساتھ وہ تنہائی میں آ جاتا ہے، قَالُوا إِنَّا مَعَكُمْ، وہ کہتا ہے نہیں میں حقیقت میں آپ کے ساتھ ہوں. میں کہتا ہے نہیں حقیقت میں اپنے شیطانوں کے ساتھ میں دوست ہوں. میں یعنی وہ آپ کو اسلام کی خدمت دکھاتے ہیں، آپ کو ایسا نظر آئے گا کہ وہ اسلام کی خدمت میں ہیں، لیکن کیونکہ عمل اور دعویٰ ان کا ایک جیسا نہیں ہے وہ مومن نہیں ہے. تو منافق ایک ایسا انسان ہے جو شام تک مومن رہتا ہے لیکن صبح تک وہ کفر اختیار کرتا ہے، یا اس کے برعکس کہ وہ صبح وہ مومن ہوتا ہے اور شام تک وہ کفر اختیار کرتا ہے. اور یہ ایک علامت ہے آخر الزمان میں کہ امام کے ظہور سے پہلے کچھ ایسے افراد ہوں گے جو صبح کو ایمان اختیار کریں گے اور شام کو کفر اختیار کریں گے. تو منافقت کی کچھ علامات ہیں جو اللہ کی ذات نے بیان کی ہے، جو آج انشاءاللہ بات کرنا چاہتا ہوں. صلی اللہ علی محمد و آل محمد. ایک علامت یہ ہے کہ وہ سچائی سے کام نہیں لیتا. وہ منافق انسان سچائی سے کام نہیں لیتا. اگر کسی سے وعدہ کیا ہو فرض کریں تو وہ وعدہ کو پورا کرنے والا نہیں ہے. وہ فرض کریں کہ کسی نے آپ کو جمعے کی نماز کے بعد آپ کو گھر میں دعوت دی ہے، اس نے جمعہ بھی گزر گیا، نماز گزر گئی، پورا جمعہ گزر گیا اور کسی سے رابطہ بھی نہیں ہوا، کسی سے بات بھی نہیں ہوئی، نہ کوئی خبر ملی اس کے ساتھ. پھر دوبارہ وہ فرد ملتا ہے آپ کو اور پھر کہتا ہے نہیں جی آپ کل آ جائیں ہمارے گھر میں، اور پھر وہ بھی دن گزر جائے، نہ رابطہ ہو نہ کسی کے ساتھ ملاقات ہو. یعنی وہ اپنے وعدوں کو پورے کرنے والا نہیں ہے وہ انسان. یہ ایک علامت ہے کہ وہ اپنے وعدوں کے اوپر وہ سچا نہیں ہے وہ انسان. لیکن وہ خود منافق جو ہے وہ وعدہ ضرور دے گا، پورا نہیں کرے گا لیکن وہ وعدہ وہ ضرور دے گا. وہ یہ ایک علامت ہے نفاق کی. دوسری علامت یہ ہے کہ بہانہ بنانے کے لیے آسانی سے جھوٹ بول لیتا ہے. وہ کوئی بھی بہانہ بنانے کے لیے کوئی آسانی سے جھوٹ بول لیتا ہے. وہ کچھ ایسے افراد ہیں جو بہت آسانی سے جھوٹ بولتے ہیں اور یہ ایک منافقت کی علامت ہے. مجھے یاد ہے ایک شخص تھا جو ایک کمیونٹی میں، وہ ہمارا ایک اچھا دوست تھا، وہ جو مسجد میں اور کمیونٹی میں وہ جھوٹ بولنے میں معروف تھا، جھوٹ بولنے میں معروف تھا وہ. اور کچھ ایسا انسان تھا کہ ایک دفعہ ہم نے اس کے ساتھ ملاقات رکھی تھی مسجد میں، اور جب وقت کا ٹائم آ گیا تھا کہ مسجد میں ملاقات ہو اس کے ساتھ، تو اس شخص کو ہم نے فون کیا، کہا کہ آپ کہاں ہیں؟ تو وہ کہنے لگا کہ میں مسجد میں ہوں. تو ہم جب مسجد میں تھے تو کہا کہ اب تو مسجد میں نہیں ہیں بظاہر ہے. نہیں آقا میں مسجد میں ہوں میں. تو پھر ہم نے کہا کون سی مسجد میں ہیں آپ؟ تو پھر وہ کہتا ہے کہ میں مسجد میں ہوں میں. تو پھر دوبارہ کہتا ہے جی بس میں 5 منٹ میں پہنچ رہا ہوں مسجد میں. یعنی آسانی سے جھوٹ بولنا، جھوٹ کو ایک ایسے زبان کے اوپر جاری کرنا کہ اس کا اہمیت بھی نہیں ہے، نہ اس کے سے ڈرنا، نہ اس سے کہ زبان کی گناہ سے ڈرنا، نہ کوئی یہ فکر کرنا کہ یہ جھوٹ ہے. یہ بھی ایک علامت ہے منافقت میں. کچھ ایسے افراد ہیں جو ہر بات پہ جھوٹ بولتے ہیں، یعنی ایک ایسے حد پہ پہنچ گئے ہیں کہ چھوٹی چھوٹی چیزوں کے اوپر جھوٹ بولتے ہیں اور سب سے بڑی بڑی چیزیں پہ جھوٹ بھی بولنے والے ہیں. تیسری علامت جو منافقت کی ہے کہ لوگوں کے درمیان شک و شبہ ایجاد کرتا ہے. وہ ان کے مذہب اور دین اور آئینہ جو انسان کا ہے اس کو مبہم کر دیتا ہے. اس کے سامنے ایک ایسا دین پیش کرتا ہے کہ جیسا دین کے اندر بہت ساری کنفیوژن ہے. دین کوئی واضح دین نہیں ہے ہمارا، اور دین بہت ہی کنفیوزنگ دین ہے ہمارا. یہ منافق کا کام ہے. اصل میں منافق ایک ایسا شخص ہے کہ اپنا سست عقیدہ دوسروں کے اوپر تحمیل کرنے والا ہے. اپنا سست عقیدہ دوسروں کے اوپر تحمیل کرنا چاہتا ہے. وہ ہر چیز کو مشکوک بنانے کی کوشش کرتا ہے. کوئی چیز ایسی کوئی نہیں ہے کہ جو واضح ہے اسلام میں. یا حتیٰ اگر واضح ہو تو کچھ ایسے کتب ہیں جو ہمارے مثلا تشیع کے اندر کے جو مثلا مشکوک ہیں، اس کے اندر کوئی اس کے درمیان کوئی شک و شبہ ہے اس میں. یہ بھی ایک منافقت کی علامت ہے کہ اپنا سست عقیدہ دوسروں کے اوپر تحمیل کرنا چاہتا ہے. اور آخری علامت جو بیان کرنا چاہتا ہوں وہ یہ ہے کہ مومن سے ایک منافق حسد کرتا ہے. منافق مومن سے حسد کرتا ہے. اگر مومن کامیابی دیکھتا ہے اپنی زندگی میں تو منافق کو اچھا نہیں لگتا کہ وہ کامیابی اس نے حاصل کی اپنی زندگی میں. فرض کریں کہ ایک مومن کی بصیرت میں ترقی آ گئی، کچھ دین کی آگاہی آ گئی اس کے اندر، اور یقین کی منزل پہ فائز ہو گیا کچھ چیزوں میں، تو منافق اس کا مذاق اڑائے گا. منافق کہے گا کہ اس کا ایمان دیکھو، یہ دیکھیں کون سا مومن ہے کہ اپنی یقین کے منزل کے اوپر فائز ہو گیا ہے. تو مذاق اڑاتا ہے. یہ ایک نیچرل چیز ہے. ایک انسان جو نفاق رکھتا ہے اپنے دل کے اندر، وہ مومن کی کامیابی کو نہیں دیکھ سکتا. مومن کی کامیابی کو دیکھنے کے لیے صرف ایک مومن ہی دیکھ سکتا ہے ایک دوسرے کو، اور اس کے دل کے اندر وہ خوشی ہو کہ مومن کامیاب ہے اس دنیا میں. صلوات پڑھ لیجئے محمد و آل محمد میں. اللہم صلی اللہ. We are currently speaking about the signs of hypocrisy and what makes a person a hypocrite. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran about a munafiq, وَإِذَا لَقُوا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا قَالُوا آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ, that when they come towards you, they show themselves as them being as the believers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They claim that they believe in the religion. وَإِذَا لَقُوا الَّذِينَ وَإِذَا لَقُوا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا قَالُوا آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَإِذَا خَلَوْا إِلَى شَيَاطِينِهِمْ. But when they are alone with their satanic friends, when they are with the people who do not believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, قَالَ إِنَّا مَعَكُمْ, they over there, they say that we are with you instead. They say that we don't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They give up their iman very quickly. They sell the iman for a very cheap price. They are willing to compromise their own deen for their own benefit inside of this dunya. This is one of the main signs of hypocrisy inside of the Quran, that the person is willing to sell his iman for very cheap price. If push comes to shove and he has to change his identity very quickly. He'll go ahead and say that I'm not a Muslim, for example. Or he will say that I'm not this type of Muslim. And he will go ahead and try to defend himself in a way where he can go ahead and become part of that group. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this type of person is also a munafiq. So one of the signs we mentioned is that he sells his deen for cheap. The other sign that we spoke about in Urdu, which I'm just translating into English so that everybody can benefit from this, is that he's not honest about what he does inside of his life. And the dangerous part about a munafiq and hypocrisy is that the person is not a kafir. He's a person who believes in Islam. He's a person who is within us Muslimin. It's actually a trait within inside of certain Muslims that they sort of have a double-faced Islam. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. They have a two-faced Islam. On one side they show to be extremely steadfast on their path, and on one side they show to be very weak on their path. But a person that is a hypocrite, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us in the Quran that He doesn't take things seriously. He doesn't really show truth inside of His words. And I gave the example of a person who claimed once when I had a meeting with him inside a masjid, although this is an example everywhere, for example, he says to me that I'm in the mosque, and I ask him that, where are you? Not in the, I'm in the mosque myself. But he says that, no, I'm inside of the mosque. And he said, no, I'm reaching there in 5 minutes. The person, he easily goes ahead and lies about something. The person that can lie very easily, and he can go ahead and just blatantly speak a lie, that person is has this sign of hypocrisy inside of him. So this is one of the alamat that we spoke about. The second one we spoke about, which is very important, dear brothers, is that he's not willing to fulfill his promises and oaths that he's made. For example, he's made a promise to you that he's going to repay you back this money by the end of next week, or by the end of the other week. And he keeps on delaying it for months and months and months. He keeps on delaying it for another year, for example. That person doesn't have iman inside of himself. Rather, he has hypocrisy inside of himself. A mu'min is the one who fulfills his oath. He fulfills whatever he promises to another person. He doesn't go khilaf on his wa'dah. He doesn't go against his own promise. But rather, a munafiq is the one who goes against his promise. And he breaks his trust amongst the people again and again and again. So this is another sign that we spoke about. The third sign that we spoke about is that a munafiq can't see the success of a mu'min. He can't see that success within inside of a mu'min. And if he does see that success inside of him, he has jealousy towards him. He starts to feel like as if he's burdened himself by hearing the news of a mu'min being successful within society. And only a mu'min and only a true believer of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can be happy for another believer at the time of success. But if there's that small little bit of jealousy inside of somebody when a mu'min sees success inside of his life, that means that there's some sort of nifaq inside of us. There's some sort of hypocrisy inside of us. So the third alamat that we spoke about is seeing the success of a mu'min. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala. In the next khutbah, inshallah, I'll be speaking about the signs of hypocrisy and also the damage it can cause within inside of society. What damages are there of a munafiq within inside of a society? It's very important to speak about, because at the end of the day, we can have a look at these signs and look at these harms that are happening within inside of society, and we can judge for ourselves where do we stand. It's very important to speak about this topic. So next khutbah will speak about the damages hypocrisy can cause within inside of society, inshallah. وآخر الدعوانا عن الحمد لله رب العالمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا مضاد له ولا شبيه له الذي ليس كمثله شيء والحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا ولم يكن له شريك في الملك ولم يكن له ولي من الذل وكبره تكبيرا الله أكبر كبيرا والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الهداة المهديين وصل على وصي رسول رب العالمين إمام المتقين أمير المؤمنين مولانا علي بن أبي طالب اللهم صل على محمد اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على قرة عين الرسول أم الحسنين فاطمة الزهراء سلام الله عليها اللهم صل على اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على الإمامين الحسنين السبطين الرسول سيدي الشباب أهل الجنة اللهم صل على اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على الأئمة الهدى والهداة الأخيار والأئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على مولانا صاحب الزمان اللهم صل على محمد وآله السلام عليك يا بقية الله في أرضه السلام عليك يا وعد الله الذي ضمنه اللهم عجل في فرج مولانا صاحب الزمان واجعلنا من أعوانه وأنصاره اللهم عجل في فرجه وسهل مخرجه وأوسع منهجه واسلك بي مهجته وأنفذ أمره واشدد عزره واعمر اللهم به بلادك وأحي به عبادك أما بعد أيها المؤمنون أوصيكم بتقوى الله الثاني. Again, I would like to advise myself first before I advise anybody else to practice piety and to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to fear the day of judgment and to fear the signs of hypocrisy that may lie deep inside of ourselves, and we can remove these chains of hypocrisy if we do have it inside of us. Just as serving as a quick reminder for the brothers, please try to arrive as early as possible, as the clocks have rolled back an hour before, and so Juma will be starting at approximately 11:50. So just so that you do not miss the first khutbah, please arrive on time, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We stated in the previous khutbah the signs of hypocrisy, but now I'd like to shift the focus on the dangers of the munafiqeen. What dangers do they pose towards the society of a mu'mineen, towards a community, for example? The number one issue is that a munafiq and a hypocrite is a person who would like to manipulate your sincerity towards the religion. If a mu'min, he has any sort of khulus towards his deen, if he has any sort of sincerity towards what he does inside of his religion. For example, he's a khadim of the masjid, for example. He's working, he's serving his time, and he's putting his effort into serving this mosque. A munafiq will come and try to manipulate your service towards the masjid. He'll try to come and manipulate your service towards the community. This is the number one danger a munafiq poses towards the society. He'll try to manipulate you in such a way with his own aqidah, with his own dry ideology and belief, and it's usually with their own understanding, their own research, and it's different towards all of the ulama and the mujtahideen, and they'll come and present it in front of you, and they'll make it look like as if this is the truth instead. This manipulation and this sort of trying to enforce their own aqidah upon somebody else is a danger that a munafiq poses towards a society of mu'mineen. The second danger that a munafiq poses towards a society is what our Holy Prophet of Islam sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala He states, he was once talking to our Mawla Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu salam. Allahumma salli ala. He says to Mawla, he says, "Oh Ali, I am not afraid of kufr, I'm not afraid of disbelief, I'm not afraid of shirk, because both groups, they openly state the enmity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm not afraid of these two groups, but I am fearful from those of my ummah who are hypocrites. I am fearful of those who within inside of my ummah, they have a two-faced, because they claim to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They claim to believe in me, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They claim to believe in my messengership. They claim to believe in my kitab, but the batin of their hearts is something else. The apparent, the outer dimension of their whole wujud and their existence, it claims Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It claims the deen of Islam, but within inside of their batin, it's something else completely different. The Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, states to Imam Ali alayhi salam that I am fearful of those people who have this hypocrisy inside of themselves. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He states in Surah Baqarah, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَقُولُ آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ, that there are some people who claim the belief of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ, and they also claim to believe in the Day of Judgment. وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ, but they are not mu'mineen. They are not mu'mineen. It's so beautiful how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He speaks about munafiqat in the start of Surah Baqarah. He gives the virtues of the mu'mineen first, in which inshallah I will speak about in the coming weeks as well, the virtues of a mu'min. But the virtues, the attributes of a munafiq are also something that's very, very important on the other hand as well. He says in the following verse, يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهَ وَمَا يَخْدَعُونَ إِلَّا أَنفُسَهُمْ, that they try to fool Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they don't know that they are only just fooling themselves. وَمَا يَخْدَعُونَ إِلَّا أَنفُسَهُمْ, that they are fooling themselves because they are trying to fool Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This sort of misinformation that's been given about your deen, about your madhab within inside of society. You see some people, they try to give you misinformation. They try to plug in and install things that aren't part of the package. These sort of people are very dangerous towards a society. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that deep down they don't believe about what they claim on their tongues. أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ اشْتَرَوُا الضَّلَالَةَ بِالْهُدَىٰ, that the hypocrites, they think they have paid for guidance. They think they have paid something for earning this hidayat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but rather they paid for misguidance instead. أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ اشْتَرَوُا الضَّلَالَةَ بِالْهُدَىٰ فَمَا رَبِحَتْ تِجَارَتَهُمْ, they didn't benefit from this transaction. They didn't benefit from this buying this misguidance. وَمَا كَانُوا مُهْتَدِينَ, and they weren't guided in the first place. So meaning that the one who has this hypocrisy inside of them, dear brothers, he has compound ignorance, or jahl murakkab. What is the meaning of jahl murakkab, or compound ignorance? It means that he doesn't know that he doesn't know. This is what jahl murakkab means. But the main factor is that he doesn't want to know about it either. That's the main issue. That a hypocrite, he doesn't want to know about it either. He wants to close his ears towards the realities. He wants to close his eyes towards what is reality outside over there. He doesn't want to face the realities. He doesn't allow his ego, his nafs, his jealousy, and all of those bad traits that he has inside of himself to go ahead and see what is real outside. So a munafiq and a hypocrite, he poses a danger so real to the mu'mineen of a society that he can take a mu'min away from the light, from the nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in towards the dhulamat. He can take away a mu'min from being into the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in towards the darkness. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says very, very beautifully in the ayah afterwards. What does He say? He says, مَثَلُهُمْ كَمَثَلِ الَّذِي اسْتَوْقَدَ نَارًا. He says that a munafiq, a hypocrite, the example of a munafiq is like the one who surrounds himself and lights a fire around him. فَلَمَّا أَضَاءَتْ مَا حَوْلَهُ ذَهَبَ اللَّهُ بِنُورِهِمْ. That when this light is enlightened around him, when he puts this fire around him, for example, and he lightens up this entire area so that other people can see, Allah, He snatches away that light from him and leaves him in the darkness. فَهُمْ لَا وَتَرَكَهُمْ فِي ظُلَمَاتٍ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leaves this munafiq inside of the darkness that he cannot see anymore. Meaning that he is in darkness for the rest of his life. A person that always commits this act of being two-faced, for example. Sometimes he's a mu'min, sometimes he's someone else. With inside of the masjid, in front of people, he's a believer in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but outside when he's with his colleagues, when he's with his peers, when he's with his co-workers, for example, his Islam doesn't resonate. His claim that he has inside of his tongue, whatever he shows in his amal, is not resonating with what he actually is, with the true face of his nafs. And I would like to say something at the end of this khutbah, that a munafiq would rather see his own financial benefit over the genocide of Muslims. A munafiq is the one that rather sees his own financial benefit instead of seeing the oppression on the Muslims. 315 million Muslims live inside the Middle East, correct? 315 million Muslims, that's a lot of people. And they sit and watch the onslaught that's going on today. They want to normalize ties, they want to become best friends. They don't want to help the Muslims out there. This world is a very, very, very cold place that we live in. It's a very, very sad world, in my opinion. It's such a sad world that a Muslim, for example, that lives within inside of the Middle East, he only cares about himself, he only cares about his own stomach, he only cares about feeding his own family. He looks at the tragedies that are happening around him, not too far away, but he has no feeling towards that. He doesn't care about that at all. There are people that exist that way. They're freezing cold within inside of themselves. This dunya is a very, very tough place to live in. I was watching just a few hours ago that Egypt, they opened their borders, for example, towards people coming inside of the country. But they didn't let their own nationals in first. There were people who had Egyptian passports inside of their hands. They didn't let them inside of Egypt. But they let foreign nationals in first. American passports can come in first. American passports were allowed to come inside of Egypt and flee the whole situation. There's no honor, there's no ghayrat left within inside of the Islamic world. There's no honor left within inside of the Islamic world. They just look at money and worldly gain and whatever benefits them financially first. And then after that, everything else comes. First is money. First is finance. And there's one thing that we can relate this stance to, is that when they asked Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salatu salam, Allahumma salli ala. Some of the companions, they had asked that, how can they not see what they are doing is wrong? Why can they not see this? Some people really ask this question, Ya Abu Abdullah, all of these tragedies that are being committed in Karbala, for example, why can they not see the reality? Why do they think what they're doing is just? Why do they think what they're doing is in accordance to Islam? Why do they still hold the flags of La ilaha illallah? Imam alayhi salatu salam, he replies, he says, Muli'at butunahum bil haram. He says that their stomachs are full of haram. Their entire wujud, their existence, has so much haram inside of itself that they cannot see past anything. They do not have any feelings left inside of themselves. They are as cold as a blizzard within inside of themselves. They only see people as numbers within inside of a system. They don't care about civilians. Nobody cares about civilians. They don't care about civilians. They care about their profit, their business deals. They care about what the growth of their domestic the growth of their own wealth is going to be like going forward. It's a $3 billion investment, as we've all heard. Right? It's a $3 billion investment. That's the reality of what is going on today. So Imam Hussein alayhi salam says, Muli'at butunahum bil haram. There are certain people within inside of the Islamic Ummah, they are also have this stance of Muli'at butunahum bil haram. The existence are full of haram. They cannot see past it. They cannot see past whatever haram they have eaten inside of their life. And that's turned their eyes blind towards this massacre and genocide that is going on. So hypocrisy, my dear brothers, going back to it, it's a tunnel that leads towards a person being a merciless kafir. That's what hypocrisy leads towards. It starts with hypocrisy. This hypocrisy going forward, going, and it leads all the way to a person being an absolute ruthless kafir. This is what hypocrisy and nifaq can create. So that's another danger that it poses towards a mu'min. It turns a person into a cold-hearted butcher. It becomes associated with this jurm and associated with this violence that is happening inside of the world. And I would just like to share some news for a few minutes, and then I'll go ahead and end my khutbah, inshallah. As from some news today, over 9,000 Palestinians have been killed, 70% of them being babies and children. And just a few days ago, or yesterday, a refugee camp was wiped off the map in more than 2 strikes that happened. More than 150 lives were taken all at once within inside of that refugee camp. And at the moment, as we speak, our Palestinian brothers and Gaza is being surrounded from all directions, and they are moving in to go ahead inside to the strip. They are waiting for a ground invasion, the people who are living there. And as a community in Watford, we call for an immediate ceasefire, and we ask for all of the war crimes that are being committed to end as soon as possible. And my salutations be upon the children of Gaza who are currently suffering from hunger and thirst. And my salams be upon the daughters who have lost their fathers. My salams be upon the sons who have lost their mothers. And my salams be upon the parents who have lost their children as well. And also, my salams be upon those dedicated and hardworking doctors who stayed within Gaza and they didn't flee to Egypt. They said, we are going to stand our ground and help these injured people. My salams be upon those doctors and their devotion towards their deen and their devotion towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also a short dua for Palestine before I end, please. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma kun li ikhwanina fi Filistin. Allahumma kun li ikhwanina fi Filistin. Allahumma kun lahum mu'ayyidan wa dhahira. Allahumma farrij hammahum. Allahumma ansurhum. Allahumma nafis karbahum. Allahumma dawi jarhahum. Allahumma afi mubtalahum. Allahumma ashfi mardahum. Allahumma kun lahum awnan wa nusra. Allahumma ya muntaqimu ya jabbar alayka biman zalamahum. عليك بعدوك وعدوهم يا قوي يا عزيز اللهم حرر المسجد الأقصى من الغاصبين اللهم زلزلهم ودمرهم اللهم لا ترفع لهم في الأقصى راية اللهم لا ترفع في الأقصى لهم في الراية اللهم اجعل أهل فلسطين في أمانك وضمانك وإحسانك اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله وتظل بها النفاق وأهله وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة اللهم إنا نشكو فقد نبينا وغيبة ولينا وقلة عددنا وتظاهر الزمان علينا اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين واخذل الكفار والمشركين والمنافقين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله